I wondered if you nodded.
Should be good to go now. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Jill. Council, thank you very much for your attendance tonight, Wednesday, February 10th. We have a full packed agenda before us, so we'll get right to it. We'll call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Today's meeting is being held as a virtual meeting due to the declared emergency. In order to keep everyone safe, we are taking this measure to help spread the stop of COVID-19. Although this is a virtual meeting, we'll attempt to record, stream live, and publish in accordance with Council's electronic recording of meeting policy. Due to the pandemic and the requirements for social distancing, to keep you safe, we are not able to allow the public to attend this meeting. Normally, by attending an open public meeting of the municipality, you are consenting to your image, voice, and/or comments being recorded. Tonight's meeting may be streamed live as well as recorded and published on the Southwest Middlesex YouTube channel. And before I go any further, I'd like to welcome Denny Giles to the meeting tonight. Denny, we're pleased to have you here. I see your name on the screen, and we're delighted to have you join us. Item number 2, Council, on the agenda is the disclosure of pecuniary interest. Is there any member of Council declaring a pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Yes, Councillor Cow.
I've submitted my paperwork for the declaration of pecuniary interest.
Okay, thank you very much, and it's noted. Any other councillors?
Yes.
Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Section 8C, McFarland Drain 78 Swanbag request.
Okay. All right. The paperwork, if it's not submitted, will be submitted to Jill, I presume. Okay. Yeah. All right, Mark, it's noted. Thank you very much. Any other councillor? Okay, we'll move on then. Additions to agenda. The agenda. Jill, there were a couple of letters that came in supporting our request for regarding a drainage matter in CN Railway. You can perhaps speak to that later on. I think perhaps 2 came in today. And I don't see any. Is any other councillor have anything to add to the agenda? Seeing none, Jill, go ahead.
Just we had sort of a last minute request under action correspondence from the Mini Mart in Melbourne.
Yep, that's correct. Okay, we can deal with that at the appropriate time. I think it would be either 10 or 12 in the agenda, and I'll make sure that we address that. Jill, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Delegations and presentations, number 4. We have a court of revision this evening.
Sorry,
yes.
Your worship,
Yep.
Do you want to just get a mover and a seconder?
Of course, yes, we will. So we will approve if I can have a motion to approve the
so moved
presented. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilkins. Seconded by Councillor Crothers. Questions, Council? In favor? Motion is carried. 4 on the agenda, the Court of Revision, the Switzer Drain. Bill, are all stakeholders present, or are there some absentees this evening on that?
So at this point, I can see that we have 5 attendees that have registered. So we will let them in at the same order that they're listed on the agenda for the Court of Revision.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, we're somewhat inexperienced on this. Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins.
Mayor Mayhew, before you get started, I know it's customary that you choose the deputy mayor. Tonight, I'm going to request that I sit this one out.
Oh, okay. Gosh, it is my privilege to usually do that, so we will appoint that. We will appoint that Court of Revision. The 2 ward councillors, I would appreciate being in that. Councillor Cowell, if you would be kind enough to sit on that, I'd appreciate it very much. Councillor McGill as well. Yes, Councillor Cowell?
I had in the correspondence that we received the the applicant requested that they be able to choose the counselors, and they reached out to me and they said that they would like to see Councillor Scholdice and Councillor Vink also sit. So if that's the case, I'd like to suggest that myself, Councillor McGill, Councillor Scholdice, and Councillor Vink sit.
Yeah, I think perhaps when I'm finished, I believe the wishes will be granted, and I believe that you will be allowed to stay in as well. So if the 2 ward councillors, we can choose 5. So Councillor Cowell, Councillor McGill is 2. I would be pleased to chair the meeting and sit in is 3. Councillor Vink, as a senior councillor and farm background, I would appreciate Councillor Vink sitting in. And Councillor Scholdice would then be our 5th. If he would be agreed to sit in on this, I would appreciate it. Jill, I think I have 5. Is that correct? We have Councillor Cowell, Councillor McGill, we have Councillor Vink, Councillor Scholdice, and myself, I believe, are 5. Is that correct? I'll wait for your nod.
My nod? Yep.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. And is there any objection to me being chair on this in a court of revision? Thank you. I'll take that as silence as confirmation. I'll entertain a motion that the regular meeting of council be suspended to move into the court of revision. Would someone entertain that motion, please? This can be a council motion. Councillor Carruthers, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Vink. Any discussion? All in favor?
Excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mayor Al. I don't think Councillor Carruthers can make the motion.
We're still in council at this time. It hasn't been.
Sorry.
We haven't moved it yet, so we're still in council. Councillor Vink.
Okay,
Yep.
sorry.
Any questions? All in favor? Approved. Thank you. As a result, I asked, I'll refer to you as the court. I asked the court and I asked our CIO if there were any on the schedule of assessment that were absent tonight. And the reason I did that I remind the court that should any changes to the assessment be made as presented by the engineer regarding the drain, the absence of any stakeholder court will result in the necessity of closing this meeting and rescheduling another hearing. And of course, this is due to the fact that assessment affects all on that drain, and we want to make sure that each of the stakeholders has the ability to defend their stance on that. So should there be any stakeholders absent, we will, and we change the assessment from what the engineer has given us, we will have to adjourn this meeting and recall another. And just a little refresher, council has already provisionally adopted by first and second reading the engineer's report. You'll remember that in previous council meetings. The discussion during the court of revision is solely centered on the assessment that is being proposed. This court is bound by statutory powers and a procedure act. It clearly defines the purpose of the meeting, and that purpose that we have before us is to discuss the assessment. This is our role and our only role during this hearing. Mike DeVos of Street Engineering will explain to council and staff and the public why the drain has been scheduled for assessment in the manner he has presented. Property owners do have a right to appeal the assessment. This court will continue to facilitate the process in a fair and equitable manner. The conversation is not about engineering.
Okay, I found this on the web. Is there
Mayor.
anyone?
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback here.
Mayor Mayhew, can I just
Yes,
interject briefly? Do you want to suspend the council meeting to go into court of revision, and then we can move
I
the
thought
members.
that was, the regular meeting of council is suspended. We had that moved and seconded and voted upon. We did we not? I'm sure I did. Councillor Councillor Vink asked that, and I called the question.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes, we did. Yeah. Okay.
Then we're just going to put those members who are not part of the court into the panel, or out of the panel and as attendees. So there's no confusion about who's on the
Okay.
court. Okay.
I think they
That's
already
fine. If
are.
that makes it easier for you, Jill, I have no problem with that. And council, just to continue, our focus tonight is on assessment. It's not on engineering. There is an avenue for people to discuss engineering at another level, and that option is open, but not under this particular court. I think at this time we'll call up upon the engineer. Mr. DeVos, is he with us, Jill? I don't see him on my screen. I'm hoping that he is.
He is.
Okay. And,
Yes, I'm here. You can hear me?
Yep, I can. Thank you, Mike. It's good to hear your voice. And Mike, I will hand the floor over to you, and we can we'll open this court at the time. We'll say at 7:11. If Jill, for your convenience, I'll give you that time.
And you can see me, I hope.
Yes, and perhaps just before we do that, Jill, I just want to remind, yes, Mike, we do. But Mike, just before I give you the floor, just to advise Ms. Belchamber that the names of those appeals are in your agenda. They total 6 people. We have received 6 appeals. And just to have the record note that. And Mr. DeVos, if you clarify to the court your evidence to substantiate your allocation of assessment, we'd be delighted to hear you.
Okay. What I would typically do if we were not online and in COVID situation is I would distribute the calculations that I use to be able to come up with the assessments that are in the report. Since we can't do that in person, I will share my screen if possible to review and you can follow along visually with those calculations. I would suggest that if somebody has questions as to understanding what it is that I'm explaining, please ask the question. Maybe put your hand up so that I can see it and I can answer. Or if there is somebody, one of the appellants that wants to ask a question on clarification or understanding of what I'm saying, I would be more than happy to answer that as we go. You know, we could wait till the end after I make my presentation, but sometimes it's just as good to get those questions done as we go. There are a number of different components to this project, so I'll be moving through in a step-by-step fashion. You know, after that, you know, if there's any general questions, you know, I can answer those. But if I share my screen now. It's not giving me the option for a second screen. There we go. Okay, so you can see a copy of the plan. Is that correct?
Yes, I see it, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to switch screens now and have my calculations of how we establish the assessments. In general terms, we use a method called the modified Tajim method. It's a method that was established by engineers, you know, over 50 years ago. It distributes the cost into different types of assessment based on proportion of cost. So a certain proportion of the cost generally is assessed as benefit, and then the remainder of the cost is assessed as outlet. There's also special assessments that are calculated Typically, we calculate any sort of special assessments first. We extract those special assessments out of the cost. And then when we're finished, we have what we call the regular cost that gets distributed as the benefit and the outlet after. The benefits themselves, benefit is defined in the Drainage Act, and it's defined as better control of surface water, better control of subsurface water, increased land value, increased crop production, better aesthetics. There's a list of things that fall under that category, and that is typically applied to properties that are where the work is happening or very close to it, as long as you're not in an extremely flat area. This area is more typical. So benefits would only be applied to properties that are either where the work is happening or close to it. The outlets themselves, outlet is defined in the Act to be calculated based on the volume of water that each property would send into the drain. And that would get distributed. You start out by area, and we might adjust the area up or down for the land use and how fast the water wants to run off the property. If there's bush lots or forested areas, they would have water leave the property slower than what a farm would. If there's roads or residential properties or industrial properties, water will leave those properties faster. So we adjust the areas up or down. I won't get into great detail with the outlets tonight because most of the assessment appeals are more generally with the distribution of benefit to particular properties themselves and not necessarily particular outlets. But if somebody has a question, I'll be more than happy to answer them in that regard. The other thing that we do is we have to separate the drain into each component that is of a particular either physical area or of a certain nature of the type of work that you're working on. So in this case, we have the Switzer drain, what we call a Switzer drain open portion, which is an open channel that is having special works done on it to account for the requests. We're not cleaning the drain out. We're not putting a pipe beside it, but it is affected in the fact that there will no longer be a drain there requiring any sort of future maintenance down the road. Typically, any sort of future maintenance costs would be distributed to all of the properties within the watershed. So we have separated the drain into that. That's the first component that I'm going to explain. And on the screen here, you can see we're on page 1 of my typical handout. This says Switzer drain open. And we have a total cost that's calculated at about $28,600. Some of that cost is calculated by physical work. There is work occurring right near the road and up at the top. Down at the road, we are constructing a sediment basin. We are building a drop structure and inlet. Those are special works that are being requested by the owner so that ditch upstream can be backfilled and abandoned. That's special works. Also, just the fact that we have to do a new maintenance schedule because we're changing what is there. There's going to be additional engineering that is going on. The other part of this 28,000 is the fact that without having a ditch there in the future, there's going to be less future maintenance. So we take a look and we calculate what 2 cleanouts would be for that particular stretch of drain. In this case, it's about 800 meters of drain that would not require 2 cleanouts. So that's part of this $28,000 that gets distributed. So we start out with the 28.6. And the first thing we do, like I mentioned, is that we calculate any sort of special assessments. In this case, there's a special assessment to the requesting property, Minimum Farms. The work at the outlet is about $3,250 in construction. There's $100 in allowances. The engineering is about $3,500, and that includes creating a new maintenance schedule for the drain itself after we're finished, and inspection of $300. So I'll stop here and ask a question. Are you guys looking right now? Are you able to see my calculations, or are you looking at the drawing?
I'm looking at the drawing, Mike.
Drawing, okay.
currently,
I'm
but,
sorry. When I was sharing the screen there, I was thinking I was able to share the calculations here. Just give me a second here. It wasn't working the way it normally has. I've done these things a number of times. And I'm not sure why it's not. I'm going to stop sharing and then try again. Okay.
I got him now,
That
Mike.
should be. You can see calculations now?
I can. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I thought when I was starting there, I was sharing a different screen. I don't get to see what I'm sharing. Okay, up here is when I was speaking of the 28,600, that's the total that I was referring to. And I explained what those numbers were made up of. I said that there's a special assessment. This is where we calculate the special assessment. It's to Minima Farms, and it's for the drop structure, the outlet structure at Switzer Drive. Also, there's some allowances. There's the engineering of $3,500 to do the design work, the drawings, the meetings, the numbers, as well as a new maintenance schedule that's included in that $3,500. There's $300 in inspection, plus $250 for interest in HST that get added to the cost of that part of the project, for a total cost of $7,400. That is all special works that are being requested by that particular landowner, and therefore it is assessed at 100% rate to that particular landowner there. You take that $7,400 off, and that leaves you $21,200 to be distributed as benefit and outlet. In this case, the two properties that the existing channel crosses that is going to be not required anymore is going to be the two Minima Farms properties that are on the north side of Switzer Drive. We've assessed the benefit cost as a 60% ratio as benefit with 40% outlet. We do acknowledge, though, that when ditches are backfilled and assessments are made during an enclosure project, is what it's referred to as, there's the potential that any of the costs might not receive grants. So that's not the upstream landowner's concern in this case. Their concern is only for outlet costs and maintenance of an existing ditch. So we've had to adjust that 60% up to 73% to ensure that any sort of remaining outlet costs are not impacted by the lack of grant. That is something that we need to take into consideration. But generally, we use a 60% benefit for this particular area, which is similar to what the last report was. The last report for that stretch was the report that was dated 1925. So those numbers come out to $10,970 for the one farm and $4,580 for the next farm. You subtract those two numbers from the $21,000, and that leaves you the $5,600 outlet cost that is then distributed to the upstream lands. I will go to the next page to show you how those are distributed here. So this is the schedule that shows all the properties that are tributary to that particular portion of the drain. It shows the $7,400 as special benefit, $10,970, $4,580 as the benefit, and then the $5,660 gets distributed as outlet to all of those properties upstream. So that is basically the upstream lands are contributing towards 2 future maintenance cleanouts in this case. That's really all they would need to be. If there's any excess cost, it's getting charged to the requesting owner. That's that particular section of the drain. The next component that we looked at was what we call the Switzer drain closed. And it's been separated into 2 sections, and I'm going to have to change pages here, and or maybe if the members of the court, if they have their plan with them or handy, then you can look at the plan. But if you wish, I can bring the plan up and show you. I'm not sure what you prefer. If there's anybody that does not have their plan with them. Well, maybe it's best if I share a different screen then. If I go back to the plan. This area here is the closed Switzer drain closed. It's taking water from the Switzer drain over to the McLean Switzer. We've separated it into 2 different components. The first component is called section 1. It goes from the McLean Switzer branch upstream to the point where it reaches the existing Switzer drain ditch. That is a brand new tile where there is nothing there now, and it is being done at the request of the owner so that an enclosure can happen. So it's being done as an enclosure project, whereas the section 2, we've had to separate into a separate section. Section 2 of that, from 1638 up to 380 here, this piece is a different nature. It is an existing tile that's quite old that has been requested to be upgraded to today's design standard. So it is not an enclosure. It is straight improvement of an existing drain. So it would be assessed in a normal, typical fashion that any other drain that is just an improvement drain would be. So there's 2 components to the Switzer drain closed portion.
Can I ask a question on that, Mike?
Yes,
Yes.
Martin, go ahead. Yes.
Who would have asked for that improvement, if I could ask?
Yeah, this improvement here was asked for by the minimum property.
Okay. And you're saying, Mike, that improvement had to be made to accommodate the extra flow?
No, what it is that it's an old tile. It's a 14-inch diameter pipe. It's quite old and it's quite small in relation compared to today's design standards. The Ministry of Ag and Food puts out design standards, and over time, those design standards have increased to the point where we're replacing a 14-inch diameter pipe with a 27-inch diameter pipe. So that's how much undersized the existing drain is. We did ask the next landowner upstream, the Parda Cooper property, at any point in time, that property or any other property upstream could ask the same thing. They could say, you know, this tile up here is a 1923 drain and it's too small. Please upgrade that drain. So it's more what I would consider a typical request. Most of our drains that we work on are like that, where you have an old tile that's too small for whatever reason, most likely because of any sort of tiling and surface water that comes over the ground. I should mention that these tiles, again, they're low flow pipes, where if you get any sort of large rain event, the excess water must flow over top of the ground still. You're not capturing all the water and getting it underground. So the amount of surface water coming over the ground with a really old, small drain is quite large. And a lot of times landowners will ask us to put in a bigger pipe to make the amount of surface water less, and the frequency that you see the surface water would be less. So that's a more typical request in there. We're also adding a catch basin at the fence line between Parta Cooper and Minima as well.
Yeah, so one question, Mike, if you would, please. Thank you. The cost of future maintenance is always a concern to those on the watershed. And I see in my notes here that late this afternoon, we received a letter from your engineering firm in regard to the responsibility of future maintenance on that. And Jill has that letter in her possession. Could I just ask Jill if she could briefly read that now, just to clarify a maintenance cost on this that didn't have full clarity when the engineer report was submitted. So Jill, are you still with me there?
Absolutely. So the, and if you want, I can share my screen too. I think it'll let me. And that means yours will stop, Mike. So this was a recommendation submitted today for the court's consideration relating to Switzer Drain and their job number 219059. On review of the appeals to the Court of Revision and the report provided, we make the recommendation to the court that the following sentence be added to page 12 of the report to provide specific instruction as to the maintenance, including cost of the future overland swale portion and sediment collection area on the Switzer Drain. And then this would be the portion that could be added. After completion, the future overland swale portion of the Switzer Drain bracket STA 1 plus 300 STA 1 plus 3638 end bracket, and the sediment collection area STA 0 plus 833 to STA 0 plus 853 end bracket be maintained by the municipality of Southwest Middlesex in accordance with the profile and details provided on page 2 of the drawings and at the sole expense of the adjacent property bracket Minima Farms roll number 20-059 end bracket.
Okay, thank you, Jill, very much. Mike, the reason I read that, I knew there was some concern on maintenance on that, and I'm sorry to interrupt you on that, but I thought it was important enough to include while we're discussing the costs here. And continue, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, that was a good time to say it, because that was the portion of the drain that we were referring to. I noted that when I was reviewing the file and preparing for this evening's meeting. I had discussion before about the sediment collection area and the maintenance of it, and it might need to be cleaned out several times during or relatively shortly after the ditch gets backfilled. So there could be some more maintenance to it that would otherwise not be required if the landowner hadn't requested specific works for that property. But if I continue to the Switzer Drain closed portion, what I called section 1, which is the lower part, it's about 377 meters long. It goes from the McLean Switzer Drain across over to the existing ditch. That's the enclosure where it has been requested by the landowner to build a tile so that we could enclose a ditch downstream. And for that reason, we considered the entire amount of work accessible to that particular landowner. The cost of that section is about $64,500. That had the 2 maintenance cleanouts removed from the theater cleanouts, but the entire cost that's left over gets charged to the Minima Farms with 0 outlet for that component. So that's acknowledged that, you know, beyond having any sort of maintenance to the existing drain, that cost is for the benefit of that particular landowner. If we go next, I'll go up to section 2. Section 2 of the closed portion, that's the piece from the existing ditch, the shorter distance, 67 meters, up to the fence line. and that is the replacement of the existing drain, which is a more typical request and is a more traditional assessment. The cost of that section is about $19,100. The cost then gets distributed, like I mentioned, in the Tajim method, where so much is benefit, so much is outlet. We assessed 55% of that cost to the Minima Farm and $900 direct connection benefit to the Partacoopers. The Partacooper property will have a brand new 27-inch tile brought right up to the property line, so that if they were to do any tiling privately, they could connect to a bigger, better outlet pipe right at the property. So there is some benefit, not nearly as much as what the downstream property would get, but there is benefit to the two properties. The remaining cost is $8,620 that gets distributed as outlet to the upstream lands. So I would mention that in the appeals that have been submitted, there is no reference made to this particular portion of the drain being a normal, regular type request. And again, we must look at these pieces, all these components independently and assess them in a manner that we're instructed to by the Drainage Act. So this portion of the drain is no different than any other type of drain work that we deal with. And so it's assessed in a more normal fashion compared to section 1, which was 100% to that particular landowner.
Mike,
Next
could I
item.
ask a
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead,
on
Martin.
that? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. This is the part that's close, and this outlet is on Minima's property. You've improved the outlet. I fail to see why the people upstream from that should have to pay any of that.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding it right, this outlet is on Minima's property. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll switch back to the drawing. Okay, yeah, it's this piece of tile right here. Okay, so it goes from the existing ditch up to and crosses the fence a short distance into Partacoopers and then hooks up the existing drain at that point. And
okay,
municipal drains are assessed with a certain proportion of the cost to the landowner who has the benefit. That is better control of surface water, better control of subsurface water, increased land value, increased crop production. All of that will occur where the work is happening. Also under the Drainage Act, we have to assess a portion of the cost to the upstream lands because they're the ones who are sending all the water down through. So if I pan over, and then I zoom out a bit, this particular area here, the watershed for the Switzer drain, they are sending water, collecting water through their own drains and through a municipal drain. There's the Switzer drain 1972 and the Switzer drain 1923, which are all sending water down into this part of the drain. And under the Drainage Act, they're obligated to pay what's called outlet. We separate the benefit from the outlet by proportion, because here I have to construct a 27-inch tile. That size of that pipe is because of the upstream area. It's not because of the area that Mr. Minima has, it's because of the area upstream. And all upstream properties have to contribute some of the cost towards that municipal drain so their water can go to a proper and legal outlet. This pipe is designed to an 1.5 inch coefficient. So today's design standards by the Ministry of Ag and Food dictates that we size the pipe a certain size. There was the question about in the appeal that there's no room for improvement if the landowners want more drain. By using the ministry's recommended design criteria, we come up with a pipe of 27 inches. That 27-inch pipe would have about 5 times the capacity that was there. The existing 14 is quite a bit smaller in capacity. So if future improvements were made to bring this drain upstream up to today's agricultural design standard, they could do so and just connect without having to have future improvements downstream. We have had on occasion where some landowners want a design that's bigger than what's recommended by the Ministry of Ag and Food. And at that point, those particular landowners would have to request that and then pay the extra cost. And to date, no party has done that. Either the mineral property or the upstream lands have not requested for us to go beyond what the Ministry of Ag and Food recommends. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
I'm going to
Thank
go
you,
back
Martin.
to the calculations. So that is the section 2 of that Switzer drain closed. Next, I'll move on to the McLean Switzer open. We're referring it as a branch of the Switzer drain. Currently, it's part of the McLean Switzer, but it is all encompassed in the same report. It is its own portion of the drain that it's an open channel, and it's going to be staying open channel. And we're going to be doing work on it to both do maintenance on it as well as do improvements to it. So we needed to look at it independently. We calculate the cost and separate the cost out of the report. We're about $59,400 for that part of the drain. And similar to all the other sections, the first things we need to do is look at any special costs and charge out any of the special works to the particular landowners that would be receiving those special benefits. And as mentioned at the consideration meeting, we did find that the culvert underneath the old railway embankment was not at the original design elevations. It was higher. Work had been done. That culvert wasn't the same pipe as what was originally specified there. So at some point in time, that particular property had done work on their own, and as a result, the upstream channel is too high and too flat for what it should be. And through discussions with the landowners and that particular landowner, it was requested that we remove the pipe and not replace it. So there'll be a ditch there when we're finished through the old railway embankment. Typically, any property is eligible to have a crossing, whether it's a farm, a residential property, or an old abandoned railway. Any sort of crossing work is typically assessed somewhere between 50% to 75% as benefit, with the remainder as outlet. In this case, if you see here, we have an item called normal culvert cost. That cost is for the removal of what would a normal culvert would be there. If there was a farm culvert there and somebody had asked us to remove it as part of the project, it would have been roughly $500 to remove it. There's some engineering and inspection, some interest in HST, so that's about $560 it would have taken to remove the existing culvert, with the remaining 1/3 being assessed as outlet to the upstream lands. That was the first thing that we did. As well, because the railway embankment is quite high and the costs to dig down through that embankment are there, that was constructed by the particular property owner. It wasn't there for other landowners. It's typically not something that you see, and then for that case, the additional cost for the excavation work and the disposal of the material is being charged as a special benefit to that particular property. The construction cost is $5,660. We took off the normal culvert cost because that's already being charged out for the normal type of work for a culvert. There was $1,300 in design, $600 in inspection, $230 in interest in HST, for a total of $6,870. That is assessed as 100% to that particular property because it is special work that only exists and is required because that particular property requested it. It's above and beyond any sort of normal land use that is there, regardless of whether it's a railway or not at this time. If it was a railway, I would have charged that cost under Section 26 of the Act. But because it's not a railway anymore, I'm charging that cost out under Section 24 of the Act. But the calculation remains the same. Next, we have a number of different special costs to the minima property. Because we are having water go from one watershed to the next, there is improvements that we have to make to the portion of the drain from Switzer Drive down to the railway. That portion is relatively flat in there, and the water, we will need to have that water level to ensure that it doesn't go up, because we're adding about 16% extra flow. So we have extra excavation that's required to increase the grade of the drain. So the drain will have more slope and the water will flow faster and the water levels won't be higher than they were before. That is about $690 construction for a total of $710. There's also hauling away of that material for $600, which creates a total of $620 after HST and interest. So those two items are for improving the ditch because of the transferring of water to one watershed to the next. We also have increased engineering because we had to actually survey downstream and check the design. We need to look at these components of the drain to say what is there and determine what's maintenance and what's improvements as far as the work goes, as well as provide a maintenance schedule for the future. That was $1,800, which is $1,860 after interest and HST. There was also a concern that was raised during the process that back in time, there was a complaint made about the cultivation too close to the ditch. And the superintendent had gone out a couple of times and took a look at it and reviewed with the parties involved. And it was determined that there was some cultivation too close to the ditch, but there was no material that was in the bottom of the ditch, but there may be some material on the side and some erosion that might be occurring and some seeding that might be required as part of the maintenance project. So we had to establish a value on that, and we've established $650 in construction work for $20 in HST, to a total of $670. So that was to take care of that particular issue. There's also, there was a couple issues that were raised as far as is concern for erosion downstream. The first location that was raised is at the bend, the very southerly portion of the drain, where the drain bends from going south to heading west. And at the current time, there is no erosion at this place currently, but there was concern that by adding 16% more flow, we could potentially cause erosion. It's a 90-degree bend at that location. 16% flow is not going to change the volume of water that much, but to address that particular concern, we felt that we would assess a portion of that cost to that particular landowner. So there was $2,250 construction to put protection on that bend, $150 in design for a total of $2,480, assessed at 40% to the minima farm, which was $990. $1,490 was charged as outlet to the upstream lands. Typically, erosion work is not charged as any benefit, but charged solely as outlet. And that gets to the next spot of erosion, which was immediately downstream of the railway. There is a bend where the water comes out and turns and to go along the property line. And currently, the ditch is in very poor condition with erosion that was found there now. So there's definitely a problem. The problem exists even without any of the issue of trying to bring any sort of flow in from a different watershed. And that's something that would need to be repaired and we would be recommending regardless of the reason for a report happening. And that is very similar in length and cost to the other location of $2,240, $150 in engineering, but it's assessed all as outlet. Because again, it would occur regardless of what's happening. The other issue was there was a low-grade crossing, a private crossing that was installed, and that is concrete blocks that are put in the bottom of the channel to allow farm equipment to get through the channel safely and get to the other side. That concrete in the bottom of the channel is higher than the design grade, and therefore needs to be pulled out and put back in place upon completion. That would happen again, regardless of whether there was maintenance being done, bringing it back to its design grade, or making it deeper for any sort of change of watershed. That cost was $1,600, $100 in engineering, for a total of $1,760. It was charged as a crossing as 2/3 of the cost to the adjacent landowner and the remainder upstream. It's $1,180 benefit, $580 outlet. So those are all the special costs that we've identified as works that are required due to not normal circumstances. That left $41,100 as the maintenance project, including there was a comment made in the appeal about the fact that any sort of maintenance should have a limited or little amount of engineering included in it, because that may have been done through maintenance without the request from the particular landowner. And there's $1,500 in engineering included in that $41,000. So I agree with the landowners in their appeal and in the comment made that there should not be a lot of engineering, and there was not a lot of engineering applied to the maintenance part of the project. That $41,000 for the maintenance, it was found that it's required regardless. It may have been tried and attempted to be done through a maintenance project outside of this report, but since we have to go in and make improvements, you don't want to be going in there twice. You don't want to go in and do maintenance work and then come back and do another project in similar nature and make improvements later. So that's why we felt that it should be done through as part of the report. The lower portion of that maintenance project through the McCall property, we could have stopped immediately downstream of the railway as part of the improvement project and not done any of that. And that was reviewed with the particular landowners at the time, and there was no request to remove it. So we had $41,000 to distribute to benefit and outlet. Minima property, and again, it's done in the fashion of the Tajim method, where a certain proportion of the cost gets distributed as benefit, and a certain proportion, the remaining proportion, gets assessed as outlet. In this case, there's a certain distance from the outlet down to Switzer Drive, assessed at 50% of the cost directly as benefit, at $7,050. There was a what's called damages, which if we were doing strictly an improvement project, there would have been access required, but also by doing the maintenance project through a report, there's damages required. So we assessed the damages partly to the minimum property, 50% as benefit. The total cost of those damages were $6,560. We assessed it as the 50% rate, which is $3,280 to the minimum property. The remainder being, the other half being part of the outlet at the bottom. The next property was the Walsh property, roughly 300 meters, being charged $4,930. Switzer Drive is 20 meters for 330 meters. The next property is the old railway, the GSC real estate, 20 meters for $330. J. McCallum is parallel to the drain. The drain's not physically on the property, but it is adjacent to it, and it will be receiving benefit from the work being done down there. It's at a lower portion, a much smaller rate compared to the McCall property, but it is adjacent to it, so it's $480 benefit, with the McCall property being charged $2,940. That left $21,800 to be assessed as outlet. In this particular case, we have water changing watersheds. So we are bringing water from the Switzer drain watershed into the McLean Switzer. So, and again, it's not necessarily anything being requested by the people on the Switzer drain watershed. They're not requesting the water to be moved. And what will happen is that the water coming out of that pipe will be shared from the water coming down the McLean Switzer drain closed portion upstream. So because it's now part of the drain, we calculated 16%, which is the amount of flow being directly charged to the minimum property of $3,490 to account for that increased flow as part of their outlet costs. So we've identified their portion, and we made sure that it wasn't assessed to the individual landowners, but assessed to that particular property that was requesting the work. So it's a little bit, this is a little bit more complicated than what it would be normally, but essentially it does the same thing that the appeal is requesting, in that those properties here, there's approximately 1,260 meters of open channel that we're working on, and the landowners are paying towards maintenance one time of that stretch, with $1,500 in allowances added. Now, the other things that get included in that 41,000 that wouldn't be there otherwise are things like buffer strips that have to be added. So there's some seeding, erosion control works. There's other costs that get added in, HST and interest, those sort of things that would occur through a new engineer's report. But the biggest item by far is the allowances. And those allowances are compensation directly to the landowners for where we disturb. So that's the McCall property at the bottom end, that's the Walsh property when we go through it, and the Minima property. So when we include works in a new report, there has to be compensation that's included as part of that maintenance. Even though it's maintenance, we're doing it through a new engineer's report. Is there questions on this particular section?
Council, I can see everyone's picture on the screen. Councillor Cowell, if you have any questions, just speak up. Councillor McGill, any questions? No questions? Okay.
Mayor Al?
Yes, go ahead. Councillor Scholdice, any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay, Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm just trying to understand this cleanup across the road from Switzer. How far is this cleanup going to be completed? Is it all the way to Heineman Road, or is it just to where it curves past the railroad?
I'm going to bring up the plan. So the work on the McLean Switzer starts at the top end where the new pipe will enter the ditch. So it's not up at the Walsh property up here. There is a piece of drain here that is still not encompassed by this report. There is a separate request to deal with any works up there, but that's not part of this report. So our report deals with doing open ditch work from here down through the Minima property, across Switzer Drive, down through the Walsh property, across the old railway, and down through the McCall property, around the bend, over to the May drain. This here is the May drain. So it's from the very bottom of the McLean Switzer up all the way to the point where the new pipe will empty into it. So that's the 1,260 meters.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Council. Mike, just advise me, how much longer do you need in your presentation? Are you getting towards the end, or are we
I
continuing?
am very near the end. This is basically it. This encompasses all the sections. I can quickly here, I'll be another minute or so.
No, that's fine. Take your time.
Fine.
Yep. Yes, take your time. Go
These
ahead.
are the other pages that are attached, which show the result of that distribution. So this up here is the second section of the closed portion, which shows the benefits here. It then distributes the outlets. The total outlet here gets distributed to all the properties upstream. Like I said at the beginning of my presentation, the appeals don't seem to be as much as that distribution of who gets what of that total. It's what the total outlet versus the total benefits would be. So I won't spend a lot of time explaining or going through how those outlets are actually calculated. It's the premise of how you come up with the benefit versus the outlet that seems to be in question. Then I can also show you, this is the McLean Switzer. Similar fashion, you have special benefits for special works. You have the benefits that were calculated and the outlets. The total outlets were 23,000. The total regular benefits were 16,000. The total special works were $20,230. So I would stop at that point. That is my presentation. If any of the landowners have questions of clarification as well, I'm more than happy to answer those. And usually the next step is that the appellants would to make their case.
So I have that on my agenda, Mike. I want to thank you very much. I see that you have addressed some of the concerns that we have received from the appellants, and thank you. I will call upon the appellants to present their case on why they think their land was improperly assessed. I noticed a similar language in the 6 letters that were received, and I'm wondering if there's one spokesperson for all 6. Chair will certainly entertain the opportunity to facilitate their concerns. And following that, Mr. DeVos, if you have any rebuttal remarks to make regarding their statements, we would appreciate it as well as a court of revision. Is there anyone that can speak as an appellant on those assessed on this drain?
So through the chair, we're just Mayor Mayhew.
Yes, go ahead, Jill.
So we will bring in the first member who has been listed on the agenda.
Okay.
That would be Rob McCall.
All right, thank you. Greetings, Rob. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to revert to John Walsh and let him start, and he will cover. And if I do reserve the right to maybe mention something afterwards, if that's okay with you folks.
Yep, that'll be fine. Thank you, Rob. We'll look forward to hearing from you later.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hello, it's John Walsh here. Can you hear me?
Yes, John, very well. How are you doing?
Very good, thanks. And I don't know whether you can see me or whether you need to see me. I can see you.
Okay.
And I don't know whether that's necessary. I'm happy to show my shining face, but I'm not just sure how to do it.
Whatever you prefer.
Yeah.
But I don't mind looking at the cartoon character here, John. It's fine with me.
Okay. So is there a way for me to join the video or?
Yeah, just the 3 little dots up there somewhere. Just click those and say start video.
3 dots.
Up in the upper right corner somewhere, perhaps.
Upper right of your screen.
Upper right of your screen.
Upper right of my screen. All I see is something to make it bigger here.
Tap your screen.
Tap your screen, maybe. Give it a tap or right click.
Are you using a desktop or a tablet?
Yeah, I'm using a desktop computer or a laptop. I'm using a laptop. I'm sorry.
On my laptop, it's in the bottom left-hand corner.
Okay, bottom left. So I just don't see it. So anyways, I'll just continue speaking, and sorry if you're just seeing a cartoon character.
No,
So first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, as I have the same concerns as the rest of the appellants, plus a few more. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And here we are again, meeting up on a drainage issue. And I recognize that not everybody has a farming background. So I wanted to just speak to an analogy that might help people understand our view as landowners in this situation. So our drainage ditch situation is similar to this. Consider if you ever owned a store on a main street of a town, and you took great pride in your business, and you were part of a business improvement association that helps promote new business for all other store owners in the town. However, imagine one of the store owners on the street who doesn't have the same pride of ownership, buys a rundown building and decides to make improvement and uses the business improvement association rules to upgrade their store. This ultimately results in no benefit to your business, but you're still expected to pay for, in our case, 23% of that store's improvements. And in addition, every time there's a heavy rain, water flows in through your front door of your business, ruining some of your inventory and impacts how you serve your customers. So you can't fix this problem until the other issue is resolved. So this is very similar. I hope that grounds it a bit for where we're coming from here.
Yes.
So now if I could get into the letter that I sent.
And John, we'll
like I
focus
said,
on John. Just sorry to interrupt you there, but the analogy is good, but we're extremely focused as a quarter revision. We are only authorized with one mandate, is to look at the assessment aspect of this. Okay, so your communications to this court have to be regarding the assessment. We cannot deal with anything else. That's our mandate as dictated by the Drainage Act. So go ahead, but focus on assessment. Go ahead.
He's on mute.
Oh, John, you'll have to unmute yourself. The little microphone, give it a click.
Got it.
Got it. You're good now.
Okay, I'm back again here.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry about that. And I totally understand. It was just more context, right? So what I'd like to start with is that I'm assuming everybody has read my letter about my concerns on the assessment, and I'll keep it to assessment. One of the challenges is that all the lots and concession numbers listed on Schedule C and D on pages 17 to 22 of the report that we were given on September 16th, 2020. Oh, here I get to start my video finally. That all those pages on 17 to 22, all the lots and concession numbers are incorrect. So it's been difficult to comment specifically on each line. So we have to, be very general about the assessment. And I'm not sure if people noticed that, but did you see in the report that was provided on September 16th that all those lots and concessions are incorrect? And with that in mind, I'm wondering if we should just stop at this point and have those assessments redone. Because what Mike put in front of us today was new material. I hadn't seen that. Do you see that, Mike, that all the lots and concessions are incorrect?
Go ahead, Mike. You're on mute.
I am not aware of that.
Okay, so they are. Everyone is incorrect. I tried to reconcile them, but they seem to be out by a range and a lot. So that's forcing me then, if we don't want to stop the discussion here, to talk in generalities. But I do have a few other specific points. So first of all, was that all the other landowners, except for the original requester, see this as simply a property improvement. And we believe that the requester should be assessed all the costs of the project, except what the other landowners' shares are for one ditch maintenance cleanup. And we did some calculation in my letter. And I know, Mike, you're saying that it should be 2, but when we met with Brandon from Spreet last summer, he said that he believes that a tile drain really only has a lifespan of 50 years. And at this point, we haven't seen any maintenance on these ditches for almost 45 years. So it doesn't make sense to us that we should be paying for, up to being assessed for up to 2 cleanups on these properties. Therefore, we're requesting that all landowner assessments other than the requesters be reduced by at least 50%. And the difference in that cost be reassessed to the original requester. And so then on top of that, we really question the benefits and the outlets that are given. And there's multiple reasons within my letter explaining why we don't see this gives us any better outlet or any benefit. And they're all listed in that letter, like diverting one drain into another, just increases the amount of water that has to flow through that. The ditch that's in play here is going to be enclosed with a tile that, through my calculations, only provides about 1/10 of the capacity that an open ditch gives us.
We're getting into engineering here again,
Yeah,
John.
okay,
We'll
so
try to
I'm
focus
just
on,
trying to
assessment.
explain my points on the assessment, why I don't.
And I'm trying to explain our position as well.
Yeah, okay. So it's in my letter explaining why. So then our only benefit is ditch maintenance. and therefore, like we were saying, we don't believe that there's a lot of cost associated with in doing ditch maintenance. So again, most of the engineering costs should be assessed to the original assessor or a requester. Now, could I take us to page 13 in that report? That's where the allowances are calculated. And I don't understand, if you look at page 13, why Minima Farm gets any damage or right-of-way allowances except for the ditch cleanup. As he's asking for this, he should expect that his property is going to be impacted by this work. Yet he gets almost $100 for the open portion, and then another $26.50 in damages for the work that's happening on his property. I don't argue all the costs associated with the maintenance work. So that's a key point there. All right. So Mike, any comment on that? Why the Minima Farm would be allowed right-of-way and damages, or I guess it's just damages in the case of the open portion and the closed portion?
Question to Mike.
Yes.
Mike, if you could read that and the amount of money that the question surrounds. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I could start with the open portion. The Switzer drain, there is some work that's occurring within the property where the sedimentation collection area is being constructed. And so that area could potentially be disturbed by crops, and the Ministry of Ag and Food and the Drainage Act have both required us to calculate the area being disturbed and the fact that there could be crops there when the work is being done. It's going to be done by the municipality through the report. So there is $100 assessed for the disturbance in the area right near Switzer Drive where that particular work is occurring. And then on the Switzer drain closed portion, that is the 380 meters or so where the new tile will be installed from the ditch upstream to the location of the old drain and across, and then up where the existing tile is up to the Party Cooper property. And again, the Drainage Act instructs me as the engineer to calculate and provide allowances for disturbance of crops and soil wherever there's going to be disturbance. And a new pipe will be put in there potentially when there's going to be crop there. And for like any other project, we are required to do that. The $2,650 is separated out into the two different sections. The section 1 which has most of the length. That's part of the section that's being charged 100% to that property. The smaller number, or the shorter distance, would be part of the existing drain improvement project, which is, like I said earlier, is similar in nature to than any other municipal drain project. The appeal does not separate out the components of them. It just uses the project as a whole. And that one part from the ditch upstream to the Party Coopers, where we're replacing tile with tile, is a different section. So again, that's why this $2,650 is, because there's about 380 meters of disturbance potentially to soil and crops.
Yeah, I understand what the damages are about. It just doesn't seem right that a person's requesting this work to be done when no one else wants it, and he's still being assessed or allowances for damages, right? So that's another one of our points. If I can continue, the McLean Switzer drain has been in poor condition for a long time. And in 1999, I asked for permission and paid for my own clean out along from Switzer Drive to the railway, and paid those costs for both the clean out and the distribution of the spoil. Yet none of that was captured in the history that was provided on page 2 of the report, and I'm not compensated at all for that. And I'd like to understand why that isn't being taken into consideration.
You want me to respond now? I can answer that. Typically, that would have been previous maintenance. It has nothing to do with this work. This work is being done to accommodate maintenance requirements in terms of siltation that has occurred since that time to today, and as well as to account for any improvements that are required by the minimum request. So we look at the condition of the drain as it is when we started this project in 2019, and we've done an analysis based on that. At the time when you did your clean out, you could have asked the municipality to do the work and assess the work out as maintenance to the entire watershed. And it appears that you have chosen not to do that. That is not anything that I have the ability or the need to address.
All right, yeah, and so I guess we differ on that opinion. There were extenuating circumstances at that time that, the drainage superintendent at that time said they couldn't clean it out because they couldn't get the grade because of the railway issue, and didn't pursue the issue with the railway. So I ended up paying for it myself, and I had to get the permission, and there was an actual bylaw passed on that. So that's why I just find it surprising that $1,300 odd wasn't considered in this report, as I'm now expected to be charged for two future cleanups. And another point I'd like to raise is that low-level crossing on the just near the Switzer property seems excessive to spend $1,600 or more to remove that. So I would like that removed from the assessment, and I will do that work myself to remove that low-level crossing and not replace it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
All right, I think that's it for the majority of my assessment-related points. So over to anyone else who would like to add their comments. Maybe Rob.
Yes, I think Rob had his cue in there. So Rob, go ahead if you'd like to speak.
There, I think I got it on.
Yep, you do. I hear you, Rob.
Okay. I agree with John's first initial. When you have wrong lot and concession numbers on this, how can we move forward with this anywhere?
Okay, that's noted. We'll have to get an opinion on that under the Drainage Act. Andrew might be able to help us out there at time. while we're on that subject, Andrew, would you like to address that? I was unaware of that, and
Alan, Mike wants to respond there.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yes. I've been able to confirm John's concern since the time that he brought it up. That's the first I've heard of it, and the names are correct, but it appears that there is some incorrect information in the report. If the landowners are concerned that they cannot identify their properties, the roll numbers are identified. So each particular property has a tax roll number that are identified. And looking at what I see, I would more than suggest I would provide an updated schedule with the lots and concessions corrected. I did not know of that until today, but that's certainly something that should be corrected. I can do that if I believe by looking at the schedule, if you can identify your property with your tax roll number on it and your roll number, it should be sufficient. But if the particular landowners wish that correction to happen before we continue, then I would have to suggest to adjourn the meeting, correct it, and then continue the meeting at a later date if that is not possible for the landowners to follow which property they own.
I will go back to John. John, has anyone given you any indication that they could not identify their property in this report?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself again.
Yeah.
Generally, everyone I know doesn't think in terms of roll numbers. They think in terms of their properties as lots and concessions. And so it's very difficult. I know when I saw things like special benefits assigned to me, I tried to relate them back. And it's difficult to do that. And I think when we're talking about these kind of numbers, it's confusing. It's confusing for people to have that error. It also shows, I think, that that if there's errors here in something as simple as that, there's likely other errors in the report.
That remains to be seen. Are there, I'll pass it. Yes, Mark has a question. Go ahead, Councillor McGill.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'm looking at the map here. I see the lot numbers. I know some people call Thames Road 12 Side Road. And when you go east of Thames Road, you get to lot 12, then lot 11, then lot 10, lot 9. That's what it shows on the map. I see Longwoods Road marked here, Switzer Road. I don't know where everybody lives in that area, but I see the names on the map and they appear to be correct, like Minima Farms, John Pardy Cooper, and so on. So where is the problem with the, it appears that the map is labeled correctly as far as lots go.
Yeah, that was my concern as well. John, would you like to speak with that or counter that objection? Like what I'm saying is that is there a we realize of the technical aspect of the number and the range, but my question to you was anyone not able to identify the property or extreme difficulty identifying the property? Like how serious was the problem to the reader?
Yeah, sorry, I keep getting muted and unmuted, so so I couldn't respond there. Yes, the map is correct. It's the Schedule C and D on where the actual numbers are associated with it, Mark, that is incorrect. And I didn't notice it until I was actually preparing for this meeting. And so I haven't had a chance to talk to others, but I know for me, where I own multiple properties, it's challenging to understand exactly what they're referring to. But yes, I would agree that the map is correct, but pages 16 through 22 are incorrect.
Okay, thank you. Mike, if you have any concerns, I know you reiterated to and gave a suggestion to the court of revision here. How strong do you feel about that? Are you asking the court to seriously consider adjournment, or is the problem of such an extent that such a little extent that we could go on? Do you have any opinion?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the plan itself, it identifies each property with a name and a tax roll number. So the properties are identified correctly with a name and a roll number. Those roll numbers can be cross-referenced to the assessment schedule. So you can look at the assessment schedule and identify your property. I do see now, once this is brought to my attention, that some of the lots and concessions aren't labeled correctly. And I don't have an issue myself pinpointing which property is which, and I would think that the landowners could do the same. But if they really look at it and say that they cannot absolutely determine which property is which based on the information that's provided, you know, adjourning and reconvening at a later date would ensure that that gives them the opportunity to see a corrected version.
Okay, at the appropriate time, the court of revision will have a chance to have some communication with each other on this, and I'll reserve that decision. The court will make that decision as collectively, and at such time we get together. John, Rob, thank you for your concerns. Are there any other appellants that wish to speak?
Your Honor, am I
yes.
still?
Yep. Go ahead, Robert.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
Are we still the roll model or the lot and concession?
Come again with that, Rob, please.
Still the roll number or the lot and concession?
I'll let Mike answer that.
I had a hard time hearing that as well. Could you repeat yourself, Rob? I'm sorry.
Well, my question is, we know where we live. My question is, do you? And is this a legal document? And are you going to build a lot and concession? Or are you going to build a roll number?
Bill.
The invoicing and the assessments go to the roll number.
How can you vote on a legal document that has been shown to have errors like that?
And like I mentioned, that it needs to be corrected and should be corrected. And if you as a landowner have serious concern that it needs to be corrected before we continue, my recommendation to the court would be to adjourn and correct it. But if you can refer to where your property is on the plan and determine which property you have in relation to the schedule, if you're comfortable with that, we could continue. That is going to be something that you as a landowner, I think, would be determining, is my own opinion.
And Councillor Scholdice, I see your hand up. Go ahead, Michael.
I apologize for that, Mayor Mayhew. I'd prefer for Rob McCall to be able to answer the question.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Yep.
I asked the question back.
Yep.
Do you feel? You've been asked and it's been brought to your attention. Let me hear what you feel.
Myself? Who are you asking the question to, Robert?
People that have a vote, and obviously we don't.
Anyone that wishes to speak, any appellant that wishes to speak can. We are trying to entertain to facilitate all. I have had 2 people request to speak, and we certainly have given them that opportunity. Rob, if there's any others, please put them in queue, and I'll call upon additional appellants to converse. There were 6 appellants, and I've heard from 2.
Yeah, I've said my piece. I'll leave it with you.
Okay, I'm trying to address some questions. I'm going to take Councillor Scholdice first, Councillor McGill, and Councillor Cowell third. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I just really think that we should get the range and lot numbers correct before we move forward with this.
Yeah, I think so too, as well. There was, in reference to the letter that Jill read earlier in the meeting, though it doesn't affect the assessment, it does move the cost to the minima land holdings to a higher degree because they are responsible for the maintenance. In that being said, it could also be said that there has been a minor change in the consideration of assessment in terms of maintenance. So with that being said, it gives leverage to the court adjourning as well. So we may want to keep that court also in revision. Mark and Krista. Mark, go ahead, and Krista, you're following Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Would you be willing to entertain a motion or to accept a motion that we adjourn until this lot and concession problem is determined, corrected, if there is a problem?
Yes, certainly would, Mark. I'd be pleased to, and I'll hold you to that. I just want to make sure I don't do not allow Councillor Cowell to have her place. Councillor Cowell, go ahead.
I second the motion.
Okay, that's fine. Moved by Mark that the Court of Revision adjourn and that the details regarding the range numbers and concession numbers be addressed. And
So
that the
just, if you don't mind,
go ahead, Jill.
through you. So are you going to allow the rest of the appellants to speak at this time with regards to their appeals?
Okay, yes, if they're present, yeah. John seems to be the major spokesperson on here. John, are there any other appellants that wish to speak? Or Jill, would you like to call the names?
Well, we have John Cooper listed next, but he's not registered. And following that is John Cowenberg. So we could put him into the queue next and he could address the court.
Yep. John, how are you? I see you on my screen now. John, just take your mute button off there. Good.
Hello?
Yes, I hear you now, John.
Hi, this is Kurt Cowenberg, John's son.
Okay, Kurt, how are you?
I'm speaking on behalf of my father. Yeah, very well. I do have a question with regards to the section that's the old drain that's 14 inches that's being converted to 27 inches, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Currently, we do not have an issue with the 14-inch drain that's right now. So going to a 27, I don't see the benefit to myself because we have no issue at the moment. So why am I being assessed to pay for this when I have no benefit to it?
Yeah. Again, this is an engineering question. I'll let Mike DeVos address it very quickly. Again, I focus on assessment, but Mike, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I understand that concern and I agree with the concern. The property is not benefiting and won't see benefit from this improvement to a 27-inch tile, and there is no benefit being assessed to that particular property. The Drainage Act dictates that we assess a certain proportion of the cost as benefit, and the remaining cost gets distributed as outlet. And we design a tile based on an 1.5 inch drainage coefficient, which is the design standard recommended by the Ministry of Ag and Food. And for that reason, all properties which are tributary to that, and they contribute water, and their water leaves their property and uses that pipe, are liable to be assessed outlet. And that outlet is based on the volume of water that each property generates. And that is the case for this particular property, is being assessed outlet. There is no benefit being charged.
Okay. So, Mr. Cowenberg, does that answer your question? There's no assessment, additional assessment on that?
Yeah, for the time being, I'll accept that answer.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was good to have your input. We'll continue. Martin, if you could just hold your questions. I'd like to get through the appellants first. They've been waiting very patiently. Jill, on your roster there, are there any additional names?
Yep, Ian McLean is listed next.
Okay. Ian, I see your name there. If you unmute yourself, you'll be ready to go. Good. I think we got you.
Hear me okay?
I can.
All right, this is new to me, so bear with me. So those pages that you were going through at the beginning, in our report, I was having a hard time following those explanations and I was trying to find those pages in our report and go through them. We don't have them in your report, like those actual pages with the explanations in your report in our folder, or am I just missing them?
Yeah, Mike, I'll
No,
let you answer.
Yeah, you're correct. Those are calculations. They're not part of the report themselves. I have no problem sharing them if people need to see them, and that's why I presented them tonight. Typically, in a non-COVID situation, I would be bringing them with me and distributing them to the court and to the appellants. So if you need that particular document, I would be more than willing to have the municipality get that to you. Yeah, it's just not part, typically it's not part of the report, but is available if required.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see them because it does explain things a lot more than what we have here. We've got a lot of numbers and not much explanation. So even your notes, a few notes on them to help us, because it would have been nice to be putting notes down on those pages for future reference. So I don't know if you can do that when we get our lots and concessions corrected in those pages with a few notes would be appreciated.
Okay, I'll leave that to Mike to ascertain the availability. He spent an hour going through his presentation tonight. At a future meeting, should this motion pass, I will certainly allocate as much time as reasonably possible. But Mike, you have a procedure, an office procedure. If you want to accommodate Mr. McLean's request, you can so do so. And perhaps he can share them with others on the drain as well, or to some of the spokespeople. I'd like to continue, Jill, with the appellants, Mr. McLean, and who's after him?
Mr. McLean, Graham McLean is next.
Okay, Graham, go ahead.
Okay, I really don't have much to add. I don't really see a benefit on my property as well. As far as the fee cost goes, I know there's a cost to it. I think John's explained on his property, and that kind of influences mine. I do know that a clean out on the McLean Spitzer is definitely necessary for the long term of that drain. So that's all I have to say. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you very much, Graham. Jill, have we been through the list yet?
We have made that through the list of the appellants.
Thank you very much.
And I guess I only have that final question with respect to the wording of the motion. So the two members have moved and seconded a motion related to corrections of information related to the lot and concession. Can I just ask as well if that would include the additional clarification offered by the engineer?
Yes, and I think I corrected the mover and sector that should be in as well. Yeah, Mark, you have no problem with that, including in the letter referring to the maintenance of the open swale on the minima shoulders?
No, I have no problem with adding
no
that.
No problem with that, okay.
And I've been spending a little time here, if you could give me a minute.
Yeah, I just want to make sure Krista will agree with that. Councillor Kell will agree with that amendment. Will you, Councillor Kell? Yep, thank you very much. Okay, yes, go ahead, Mark.
I've got the map in front of me and I'm looking, cross-referencing it with the pages on the assessment schedules, and it appears that the roll numbers are correct with the names of the farms. It's just the lot numbers. So, yeah, I'd still like that motion to stand because we really have to be very careful to get everything right with
I
this
think so.
report
No, it's,
before we continue.
Yep. Will be with us, decision will be with us for 50 years. So we want to make sure we get it right. Okay. Well, I want to thank all the appellants for their contribution. There is a motion on the floor. Councillor Vink, I see your hand up. Did I miss you there, Martin?
Yeah, I just have one quick question to
Yeah,
Mike. If
go
you
ahead
don't
quickly.
mind, since we're gonna have a little time to think about this. When we look at the different costs, for instance, on A. McLean, one part is eligible for a grant and the other part isn't. Can you explain the difference there, Mike?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, yeah, as I mentioned, for the part on the Switzer Drain Open, where there is some assessment for future maintenance cleanouts, because it's part of an enclosure project, I can't guarantee that there's grant going to be provided for that. Typically on an enclosure project, there is not grant available. So we've shown it that way in case that the ministry does not provide it. We've also, those particular properties pay towards other work that is grantable. So because the very top end of the Switzer drain closed, where we're replacing the 14-inch tile with the 27-inch tile, that is part of a normal, typical project. That assessment is eligible for grant for sure and is noted as such. So there is different components that we have to identify for in case that the ministry decides that it's not grantable. We assumed for the assessment purposes that if it's not grantable, then the particular assessments to those upstream properties should be lowered to account for the fact that they are missing grant. So the benefits to the minimum property were originally 60%, but we increased it to 73% to account for the fact that some of the outlet assessments to the upstream properties who aren't asking for this, they miss out on the grant. They should not be penalized for that.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a motion on the floor, council. I'll call the question. Does any councillor need it read, or is it still fresh in your mind? You know what we're voting on? Any questions? And thank you, Jill, for keeping tabs on us here. I'll call the question. All in favor of adjourning the court? All opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, court. We are now back into regular council. And thank you again, Mike. We'll look forward to seeing you down the road.
Okay, we'll see you in the next reconvening.
Yeah, we will. We'll advise you. Okay, Jill, we're back in the court. Yeah, we all have our challenges with technology. I had a power bar that kind of malfunctioned on me here, so I had to grab another one really quickly here. So that's why I was off screen for a few seconds there. But I've got power. I've got juice now. Council, we are at item number 5 on your agenda, and we'll continue the meeting. That took a lengthy time. I went over about 20 minutes there than what I anticipated. So we'll have to make a move. I'll read the consent agendas. If there's any item, council, that you wish it to be taken out, just please raise your hand. I'll read it and I'll pause and look up at my screen. I'll try to catch you. Southwest Middlesex Council minutes, January 7th. St. Clair Conservation Authority, 2021 approval on their budget. Councillor Cal, do you have a question? I saw your hand go up. Okay. All right. Ontario Fire College closure. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Cal.
I actually have this question for Chief Sewell. I had sent an email earlier this week about this, and I was wondering what his opinion about it was.
I do have an opinion because I spent quite a bit of time up there, and sorry for not getting back to your counselor. I was at work, and I apologize. I knew I'd see you tonight, and I pretty much knew you probably pulled this for me. So I do have the letter here in front of me that was circulated to municipal leaders. My personal feelings are I'm disappointed with the input that the Ontario government extended to the stakeholders such as the fire chiefs, Association of Fire Chiefs, and from what I'm reading in the letter, some of the unions there as well. But I would say that down in Southwest Middlesex, due to the distancing, it was very difficult for previous administrations to send anyone to the fire college. However, in my previous chief role and firefighter role, I was in close proximity to that fire college and spent a number of times there. So this letter that was circulated to the municipal leaders, I agree with it factually in there. And not to go on because it's been quite a while. The meeting tonight's been going on. Yeah, it's going to really increase municipal budgets for having firefighters attend a regional college. Whether keeping the $65 for decades and decades to enjoy over the last few years by firefighters and municipalities, whether that was the right thing to do or not for me to say, but definitely for $65 to attend a course for a week and have 3 meals a day is obviously there could be a cost that could have been incorporated there to better facilitate that. So I agree wholeheartedly with the letter. As a business plan, and Ontario is a big province, it's difficult for municipalities to physically go to that fire college in Gravenhurst. And I think the regional training centers is a positive, but the negative is going to be it's going to be impact municipalities negatively on their training budgets to continue to train their personnel through that avenue. So I hope that answers your question, and I don't want to go on too long, but sentimentally, yes, it's disappointing to me. I attended the fire college and actually got all my schooling there for the fire service between 2004 and around 2017. So I spent quite a bit of time up there yearly. So disappointed with the no real engagement with stakeholders.
Thank you, Chief Sewell. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Cal. Yes, Councillor Cal, go ahead. Follow up?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, with that endorsement, I can appreciate that Southwest Middlesex might not have sent very many of its firefighters there, but perhaps many of the firefighters that we now have in our employment, like Chief Sewell, could only have gotten there as a result of the fire school. So I would move that we support the Augusta letter that was sent out.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilkins. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Cal. Council, I'm going to just drop back to vouchers. I missed the voucher line there. Southwest Middlesex vouchers. Thank you again for calling in to Kristen on those. I know there was some questions. Any further questions? Then we can proceed. We've addressed the fire college. Southwest Middlesex January 2021 building report. Resolution for small business. COVID-19 vaccination task force update. Resolution community safety and well-being extension plan request. County seat for village article by the author of one of the journalists in the Standard, Thank you, Councillor Cal, for submitting that.
If I could
Yep, go ahead.
speak on it briefly. I just thought it was a good one to share. I know the county is taking a look at how their council will look in the next round, I suppose, in 2022. And Southwest Middlesex suffered by losing their second seat at the table, and they suffered in a financial way, in the sense that there used to be a budget for training and conferences that was available to us. And so that was thousands of dollars that was lost to our municipality. So I think that that's great that the mayor is looking to support that. It's my understanding that if Newberry gets a seat, we will get our seat back, and that other municipalities that may be at risk of losing their seat, like North Middlesex, will be guaranteed to have their second seat. So I just wanted to bring that up and say thank you to the mayor for supporting our neighboring municipalities and our own municipality.
Thank you, Krista, very much. I appreciate that. And we'll continue on striving for that. Continuing, J, resolution infrastructure funding. K, letter from Ministry of Energy, Northern Development and Mines. Continuing, Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority, 2021 stewardship programs. Ontario wastewater. Ontario current value assessment, Perth County. Yes, Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would like to see us support this motion.
Okay, will you move that, Martin?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for Martin's endorsement of that? Thank you very much. Councillor McGill, questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Vink. Canadian Mental Health Association report from Councillor Krista Cal. Yes, Councillor Cal, go ahead.
I participated in the second meeting of the Women's Caucus this week, and this was information that we received through the Women's Caucus about the mental health impacts of COVID-19 and how disproportionately people are being impacted, specifically people who are minorities and also those with disabilities. Their mental health has never been worse, women and families with children. So I thought it was a stark and a great way to show the statistics, and a stark reminder that there's more than just more than just the traditional health costs. There's also our mental health costs associated with this pandemic.
Thank you again, Councillor Vink.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment on that. I read the report and I agree with the report, but also like to point out that I feel that people with low income, people are making minimum wage, a lot of them are working part-time, and they are being affected the most of anybody, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's certainly that aspect to it too, but we can't overlook it has had significant mental health issues with sectors of the population, and particularly women with the responsibilities of children have been severe. But Martin, your words are correct, no question. Many are affected. Resolution, municipal insurance rates. Okay. That concludes the consent correspondence with the items withdrawn for endorsement by our council. Would someone entertain a motion that the consent agenda items 5A through 5P with the noted exceptions be accepted? Councillor Crothers, seconded by Councillor Scholdice. Questions? All in favor? Motion's carried. Committee of Adjustments, there are none. Jill, correct me if I'm wrong here, if there's any additions. Public meetings, none. Staff reports, we're pleased to have Chief Sewell with us tonight. Chief, Sewell, can you walk us through A1 here, please?
Which one's A1? Just so.
A1 fire department air compressor purchase.
Yep, got that for you, Mr. Mayor. So I've looked at, put out some quotes. I put out 3 quotes because it's a very specific item we're looking for. Received 2 quotes back, and as I stated in the report, the quote I received back is fundamental of it is an air compressor system and 3-bottle fill unit with 4-bottle storage. It's common in the fire service. It's used by a number of fire departments that I'm quite familiar with, as well as I was given another 2 or 3 down in southwestern Ontario. The budget came in at $52,492 for the complete service, and this was the only individual that actually came out and physically did a measure up and a quote of our needs and assessment, and had a dialogue of our needs and assessments moving forward. So with that being said, I would recommend to council that we move forward with GTA compressor to supply the unit and install it. And anticipated install date would be, I'll be on the outside, would be June of 2021, but we're estimated that it should be in May sometime.
Okay. Thank you, Chief, very much. Council, I'm sure you'll have questions. Just direct them through the chair to Chief Sewell. Chief, what was what the budgeted amount for that? Did we have what was the budget on that? Are we within budget on that, or?
I believe it was 53,000.
53,000.
That was budgeted by council earlier this year.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure Kristen would correct us if we were wrong.
Mayor Mayhew, I'll move that report.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Crothers, I see your hand. Thank you. Any additional questions, council? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Scholdice, followed by Councillor McGill.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'm just curious if there are only 2 companies that can supply this compressor to us.
I went out to the original company that's there now, Jordair. I reached out to another company in the Toronto area, and then I reached out to this company, which is Compair or Mako. I went out with the very specific quotes for these individuals, and there's only a few. Really, Jordair and Compair are the leading ones that we're familiar with from my other employment as well. They're in one of the 2 that I mentioned. So I put out for 3, and unfortunately, I only got 2 back.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. There was another hand up here. Mark, was it yours, or? Yes, go ahead, Mark.
That was mine. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Through the mayor, could I ask Chief Sewell, this is for the Glencoe Fire Station, but does the Wardsville Fire Station use this too?
Yes, this is going to be, this is a Southwest Middlesex Fire purchase, although it is situated and has been installed in the Glencoe Fire Hall. But the relationship between the 2 stations and as well as our neighbors could actually use it in an event that our close neighbors would need some bottle refills. We could come to their aid and do that as well. So it could be used in a greater area if needed to support our municipalities around us as well.
Thank you. Yeah, fire departments are a major part of our budget, but our guys have to breathe air. And I know that the system is replacing, Chief Sewell, you commented on it before. It's well past its lifetime, I understand. Is that correct? It's 26 years, and this compressor that we're looking at has all the safety components of it. This company does offer the air testing capabilities as well as a maintenance plan. The individual that actually did the quote, the measure up, and what our needs were is the individual that makes his way around Ontario and basically does all the servicing as well after the install. So
It's all encompassing, and I'm very comfortable with the system. And I was open for quotes, but I'm more comfortable with an individual that comes down and basically sees our needs rather than one of the quotes. I did a questionnaire, and if I forgot something or didn't put something in, that could cost us thousands of dollars. So I'd rather see everything in the quote, and that it's done right. And as you said, Mr. Mayor and Council, is firefighter safety is first, and in hazardous environments, we got to make sure our equipment as well as the air is top quality. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Wilkins. It's been seconded by Councillor Crothers. Any further questions from council? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Chief Sewell, the second item of your reports tonight is the RFP, the Glencoe Fire Station heat. I'll let you take the floor.
I don't know if council's familiar with this, what we're doing, but I'm just kidding. This is a very serious issue, and I want to make sure that hopefully this is the last time that council and myself have to deal with the heating issue at Glencoe. So we had 7 bidders put in, attended the mandatory meeting. Deputy Chief Cole and myself were there. We engaged with all of them, and we were at the end and the cutoff on January 18th. We received 2 bids, and the successful bidder was Hayter Electric. However, they were the installers in the past, and myself and the deputy, we followed the procurement bylaw in regards to costing, references, as well as experience. And we followed those 3 guidelines without deviating. And again, we came to the successful bidder of Hayter. And I will leave it at that. I know there's a lot of past history, and I won't go into that, but moving forward, we were looking at the package, and like services from both providers, and we deem that cost and the work that was laid out was definitely went to the Hayter group. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll leave it in your hands, Mr. Mayor, with council.
Thank you very much, council. The chair will entertain questions through the chair. Councillor Crothers, you're first. Go ahead.
Yes, through you, the Mayor, to call it. What were the bids? Can we ask that?
I've received 2 bids, and I'll defer to my CAO. Can we divulge the bids? Is that normal practice, Jill?
So it really depends on what the proponents have identified in their proposal. So most of the time what we would say is the information is kept confidential unless they advise us otherwise. And but I can say that this is the lowest bid that is, and that was part of the evaluation criteria, that the lowest bidder was the one to be provided with the highest score. And I would have to check back on the proposals actually to see whether or not that they requested that be confidential, but it's also within the budget.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. The chair, we have had experience with this. That question has been raised in the past. It's not uncommon to give out the competitors' pricing. We don't want to damage any reputation. Councillor Crothers, I see your hand up.
Yes, sorry, just one more. So this, I just forget what was on the tender exactly, but this was a proposal, not a fixed tender. Am I correct? So do we, is it a proposal? Sorry.
Yes, it was a proposal for, there is a few items in there. Overhead heat, as well as possibly splitting the geothermal with a boiler system. And so it was split into two separate items. And the first item initially was the overhead heat, and then I came back to council about adding the boilers in there. And in answer to your question, even though we can't divulge a lot of it, the winning tender was within our budget and the other one was outside of our budget scope. And also we looked at documented reference as well, and experience with geothermal and that. So those were the three items and pricing. Those were the three items we looked at.
Thank you. Council, I'm going to move ahead with questions here. Councillor Vink, go ahead quickly. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Yeah, I'd like to mention about qualifications. I was sorry that I voted to have the geothermal in the first place. We only had we had a presentation in the afternoon, and we had a vote that night. It was well over $200,000, and so I really questioned their qualifications. It did not turn out the way they stated on that presentation. It cost the taxpayers of Southwest Middlesex quite a bit of money. And so I don't agree, even though I don't know the store, I don't agree with qualifications. And in my opinion, we chose the wrong company.
In answer through Mr. Mayor, and that,
well, either perhaps we could rephrase that too. If I could, Colin, just for a minute,
sure.
I don't know whether we chose the wrong company or the wrong system, and that could be the problem. But go ahead, Colin.
I just want to say that you know, as a municipality and being transparent, I understand the frustration on some of the council, and but when we follow our procedures and we're not to deviate and open and transparent, we basically had to score them the way we scored them, and that's how we come up with the successful bidder. So I understand the frustration, and hopefully we can move forward from this. And you have my commitment that we'll hold them accountable, Deputy Chief and myself. That's our word, and we'll make it very clear to anyone, whether it's with our compressor, that the service that we expect and the workmanship we expect as a municipality and moving forward. So that's my commitment to council as the fire chief.
Thank you, Chief Sewell. I'm going to take Councillor Scholdice. He's been patient, followed by Councillor McGill, followed by Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I had a couple of questions. I'm not sure whether this is more Greg's department or the fire chief's, but considering we know what the heat system we're looking for, I'm wondering why this project wouldn't have been tendered rather than completed through an RFP so that council could have the price before approving it.
Maybe it's more of a Jill question than a Colin question.
Okay,
sure.
Go ahead, Jill.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jill.
Through you, Mayor, again, the difference between a tender is when you know very specifically what it is that you are looking for, and it is the only product. And I think that this project had a number, as the chief said, a number of different components to it. And I would just say, I'm not sure I've ever seen a tender for the type of project that this is. So the common way to put this on the market would be through an RFP. At least that was based on our research.
I think just to add to Jill's comments, Councillor Scholdice, I think the chief knew what the benefit we wanted to attain, and the question was, how do we attain it? And thus the RFP. I think there were three major components, and the chief and I have discussed this. One, what's the best and most efficient way to de-ice a truck when it comes in? And this is very cold weather we've got. You can just imagine the condition of a fire truck that comes in when you have a polar vortex for 2 weeks in your community. It's iced up. It takes a long time to de-ice that piece of equipment, and that siren can go off at any minute. So it has to be roadworthy. The radiant heat achieves that. Martin alluded to the fact that the thermal heating system does have its shortcomings, and many people are discovering that. The boiler system is efficient, so it helps on efficiency. And as far as the radiant heat goes too, we do use that facility as a resource center in the event of an emergency. And we, with the floor heat, and Colin and I have talked about the radiant heat from the ceiling, will give a comfortable component and a quick recovery to the station when the doors are open. So we knew we knew the effects that we wanted, and the RFP, the expertise in the field, could provide a system that would address our concerns. Councillor Kell, go ahead.
Through the mayor to the fire chief. You mentioned at the beginning that you're hoping this will be the last time we have to deal with this issue. And my concern is that how many times have we had to deal with this issue since this product has been installed, and how many times the winner of this bid has been out to fix the problem?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor, I believe there was some time there that this company was not engaged for reasons in regards to the system that we put in. I did say I hope we don't have to deal with this again, because I've been here 2 months and I've dealt with it a lot in 2 months. So I can only understand briefly how people that are on council, the frustration that you're feeling for 10 years. So moving forward, that's where we're trying to alleviate this issue and move ahead. So they've been out a few times, but also the other bidder in this package has been out there as well. So there's been a culmination of a few different companies that have been trying to get to the bottom of the issue. However, in conversations with both individuals that were representing these companies that put in bids, the one individual wasn't there when this system was put in, and his knowledge, as well as the other individual that was there from the other company, you know, they both had they're very qualified in their areas. So really, at the end of the day, we've come down and we've done, because they had geothermal and the other company didn't, that could get them a few more points because of their in that field. But I'll leave it up to council in regards to the packages we had and the like products that we are looking at here, and the difference in price. So at this point, there's been a few different companies that have been in there trying to address the problem, not just the one that originally put it in, if that answers your question, Councillor.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor Wilkins, I'll allow her to go first in before you. She hasn't had a question yet. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I have a little thing that comes down, and when I tap that, I lose everything. Mayor Mayhew, I appreciate that, but I think Councillor McGill had this hand up first, and I'm not sure somebody else, so I'll wait my turn.
Okay, Councillor McGill, go ahead, followed by Crothers, followed by Deputy Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Mayor Mayhew.
And
I guess I just,
yeah, Doug will get you in there, Doug. Yeah. Thank you.
I'd just like to repeat something that the mayor said, that I think in the past, it was more a case of the wrong system being picked than the wrong company, especially when there was natural gas running right by that fire hall. It would have been so much better to have put a boiler system in right from the beginning with in-floor radiant heat. I get a couple questions. The fire chief, Chief Schul, said something about possibly a boiler. I thought for sure there's going to be a boiler as part of this system. So I just want to clarify that. And then also, does the boiler have to be certified every year? And what would that cost? And will the geothermal still provide air conditioning to the apparatus floor?
Councillor, so your last question first, because I was trying to jot them down here. So there is air conditioning on the office side. I don't believe there is, I'm trying to think here. So back to your point. Yes, there's boilers going in, because now I'll get into my point. So yes, there's boilers going in, and that's going to take over the heating only for the in-floor heat on the apparatus side, and the air conditioning part of the geothermal will not be affected. This is for the heat for the boilers. Yes.
Thank you.
I kind of jumped around there. I forgot about the first question. So.
And there was one more question.
Sure.
Does the boiler have to be certified every year?
Yeah. No, it does not. Not by the size. That's what I was. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief Sewell. Council, I'm going to just redo my cue. Councillor Bartlett, go ahead. You've been extremely patient.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I know price is very important, but I'm wondering if performance should be taken into consideration a little more, because I understand the winning bid was the original contractor. And I also understand that there have been a number of issues. Hopefully they should have cleared that up. And I'm really hoping that the taxpayer didn't have to foot the bill for some of the things that should have been done correctly to begin with.
Yeah, Jill wants to interject here, I believe. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, if you don't mind, thank you, Your Worship. So I do really appreciate Colin putting this together so quickly. It was one of the first things I asked him to do, because I knew that this was a hot topic. So I appreciate the work he's put into it already, doing the investigation and trying to get up to speed on all of the challenges that we've had, and really he put a package and a proposal to council to really try and get this result so it doesn't have to come back. But with respect to having a performance issue related to a procurement, so a service or a good, the municipality would have to have had established their process and have to have dealt with that within a specified timeframes. And it's only 3 years in which you could have a contractor that you are not willing to be working with after you've had some kind of service from them or good provided from them. So that's the time frame. Or the other issue would be if there were any kind of ongoing litigation. So I would suggest, I'm not aware of any kind of litigation. And certainly if there was anything that had been identified in terms of performance, it needed to be documented, and the time period certainly would have expired by now.
Just I caution council, thank you, Jill. I caution council too that we don't want, we're looking at what is budgeted, what has been the RFPs that have been received, the scoring of those RFPs were under budget. They have been scored effectively through a municipal process, but we don't want to talk about reputations and things like that. Both companies are no doubt highly esteemed companies. Councillor or Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead and ask your question now, please.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Actually, that was my question that Councillor Bartlett asked, so I'll just kind of make a comment. It's no doubt that haters really have got a bit of a bad reputation over the supplier and installation of the first heating source that was put into the fire hall. Colin, you and I had a very extensive conversation today. I've talked to Rob Cole, talked to Greg, I've talked to Jill. I've been all over talking about this since I read the agenda on the weekend. And I must say I was a bit disappointed. So I agree with Councillor Vink on that. However, I do understand that you did stick to the procurement policy. If there's nothing in there that addresses performance, you can't put it in there. So I guess my question to Jill is, there will be a review of our procurement policy sometime in the near future. I'm hoping that something that would address performance would be put in that going forward. And I suspect that that's probably the wish of council as well. I suspect I'm not the only one that would like to see something like that in there and addresses that. I'm certainly not in support of a secondary source of heat, but Colin, would you like to share with council what you shared with me today about what haters did do to the system a couple of weeks ago and how it is actually operating now?
Yeah, we ended up having, I guess you would say, the air taken out of the system, and it's been working normally over the last little while, and we've been monitoring it. And at this point, it seems to be working as required. And another company actually did the same thing probably back in October. So we're monitoring it and moving forward to that. And we're going to build on that and make sure that they can provide us with the allotted items that we've put out there at a high quality and the service we expect. And the representative has had quite a bit more interaction with Rob, because Rob, the deputy's been obviously been around for the whole time this has, and we've actually he's expressed the wishes of everyone that's been concerned with this item on how we need to make sure that we get this to a good place and that it's performing at a good level. And we expect that the quality, the dollars, and be returned, and the expectations of the taxpayers that we don't need to deal with this issue moving forward in this building.
Okay, thank you, Colin.
Thank you.
Councilor Portage, your follow-up question? Go ahead, Mary Gay.
I do, if I can.
Yep, go ahead,
So
quickly.
is it not true, and I don't know who wants to take a stab at this, Greg, Colin, whoever, somebody that's familiar with the system that we have in place now, if it's running at its optimum, if it's running at its, I guess, peak performance, would it not de-ice a vehicle as rapidly or maybe more rapidly than the system, that secondary system you're proposing?
I'll talk first, but and then Greg can talk about the snow plows and so on and so forth, because he actually probably does it a lot more than I do. But this is a very slow heat. The ambient heat keeps at a nice level. It's that sort of thing. The floor heat is generally a lot lower than what the ambient heat is that you feel in your body. So when you're walking around, it's comfortable. But there's no way to increase that heat or be able to aggressively de-ice a truck with the ambient heat. It just it's just slow and it melts it off, where we can put the heat up for a short period of time, be able to increase the melting factor with that. So I'll turn it to Greg, because he talks a lot about snow plows, and they have it over in their garage as well.
Yeah, just a general comment through you, Mayor Allen. Typically the tube heaters are just more, everything is just more responsive. So, and it's a lot quicker. So you can get the ice and, all that stuff that builds up on your machines off in a less period of time. And it becomes, with the heat extraction system from the ground, it is difficult, because at this time of year, it's there's not some furnace down there, 12 feet below the ground giving us hot water. I mean, it's like, it is a good, it's a base. And then, what they found there is they need to provide the additional heat to, to help out, certainly make the floor. The system won't be as responsive as a boiler or your tube heaters. You will be able to get immediate response from them. And, if they had to go back out in an hour or an hour and a half, then, they're going back out in a truck that's not all full of ice. So And we just find too that it helps get it off, and then we can get stuff cleaner and the equipment lasts longer. So that's just my general thoughts.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. Councillor Crothers, go ahead.
My question's been answered. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. There's been, the fire chief has made a recommendation to council. I'll make a last call for questions. If there is no questions, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the recommendation that's been presented to council. Would anyone feel comfortable making that recommendation? Go ahead. Yes, thank you, Councillor McGill. Is there a seconder for that motion? I'll call again. Is there a seconder for that motion? Okay, doesn't seem to be a seconder for this motion. Unfortunately, Chief Sewell, recommendations does not have the support of council. What is council's wish? The motion does not stand. What direction do you wish administration to take on this, council? Go ahead, Councillor Crothers, Councillor Vink, followed by Councillor Scholdice.
Through you, the mayor. What I'm thinking is, let's give this a little bit more time. It's not like it has to be done yesterday. And put out an RFP or a tender, specified tender, whichever, but not rush into it and see if we get more people involved in bidding. It needs to be done at some point, but it's been, as I say, it doesn't have to be done tomorrow. It will never get done tomorrow anyway. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have to make sure that procurement policies are followed here. Chief Sewell, do you wish to interject before I allow Councillor Vink? Go ahead.
Sure. At the indulgence of council, we went through quite an extensive, we put out there, I had people interacting with me from long outside our borders, which couldn't obviously make our mandatory. We put in quite a bit of stipulations on timeframes and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of work done on this, and we would only put out the same tender for work again anyway. I'll put it in the indulgence hands of council. We had 7 people showed up for our mandatory meeting, which is sometimes a lot more than a general tender or quote. If council would like to entertain the second bid, I'll leave it with council on that, and I'll leave it in council's good hands, Mr. Mayor, and yourself. But if we go through the same process again, we're probably going to get the same bidders again. But I'll or Jill, I see Jill's hand up there.
Yeah, I don't think I think we're walking on thin ice here too.
Okay,
go ahead, Jill.
I'll leave it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there is an issue with putting the exact same proposal on the market again, because of what you're actually putting onto the market in terms of a contract A versus contract B. So there's some court cases around municipalities attempting to go out a second time. Certainly it's within council's purview to not accept proposals or to determine they no longer want to take on the work, but going out to the market with the same proposal is not something that staff would advise be done in this situation. So if you'd rather just leave the situation as it is, without secondary heat, the way that we had reviewed and investigated, that's up to council, but going to the market with the same proposal is not something we would recommend.
Mark and Mike, I'm not ignoring you there. Greg has his hand up, and if you could add some clarification to it, it would assist. Mr. Storms, go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly through you, Mayor Allen. I just wanted to sort of, just bring up the word tender again, because this is something that we talk a lot about at council. And I hope everybody understands that when we put something on the market as a tender, then we're basically setting the specifications for exactly what we want. And that does not include any proprietary information. So what we would have to do is we would have to go on the market to set those specifications. So effectively what council would be asking the fire chief to do is to really go out in the market and spend more money to get those specs, then send it out to all these companies to get a bid so that you could all see the pricing. I think that's all fair. And I'm not judging council. Council can make the choices they wish, but just understand that the creation of specifications costs money. And in a $30,000 and a $40,000 project, you're going to spend from 10 to 15% to get those specifications set. Now, I mean, there's other ways. There's, like the fire chief had done. He put out an RFP, which basically in the RFP, there is an evaluation process in there, which brings him to the result that he brought today. So I just want everybody to be aware, because we talk about tenders, RFPs and RFQs, and they're completely different. And one, certainly a tender associated with a larger project, acceptable to have an engineer or somebody set those specifications. But when we just say, well, we'd like it in a tender, I think we ought to understand we're asking the municipality and the general taxpayers to spend more money to set those specifications. So.
No, and I, as chair, I'm concerned about the way this went as well. But there's a couple other people. Councillor Crothers, Councillor Scholdice. Councillor Crothers, go ahead. Mike, you're on deck. Okay, Councillor Scholdice, go ahead.
I'd just like to say that I think Councillor Crothers covered it pretty good earlier. We have an obligation to our ratepayers to be accountable to their money, and we know what kind of a heat system we need now, so I don't see a problem with putting it out for tender eventually.
Okay, Councillor Cal.
Part of the feedback that we've received is that they followed our procedure bylaw to the letter. And if we're unhappy with the result that gave us, is there anything that can be updated in our procedure bylaw that might help us, not our procedure bylaw, but our procurement bylaw, pardon me. Yeah. Is there anything that might help us if we updated our procurement bylaw in finding a better solution to this sort of situation?
Yeah, possibly, and that was brought up. We'll review that policy directive when it comes. Our procurement policy. There's many things that have to be discussed about that, and I don't think it's gone on. There has not a motion on the floor, so there's really nothing to discuss.
As a follow-up, that was directed towards the CAO.
Okay, Jill, go ahead. See.
So through you, Your Worship, the procurement policy that identifies where there are performance issues and with an actual service provider, you could only use that going forward.
Okay. And Jill, just to correct the criticism there was no motion on the floor, so really we do not move forward on this item. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yes, as far as I'm concerned, it says experience and qualifications, and qualifications, and I think is partly past performance. And of course, we've already.
Again, Martin, I'm going to have to interrupt. We're dangerous, treading on legal territory here. I don't want to defame a reputation of a very large company that's within our market area on reputation. Okay, we don't want to say things like that publicly, and I think we're looking at ramifications if we continue on that. You can do so, but do so at your own risk, and don't risk the council's or the corporation's position on that. I'm concerned about allegations of poor performance stated publicly on an identifiable individual. I'm concerned about that, Martin. I know your intentions are good, but I am concerned about that. And I regret the chair is going to have to stop you on that, but we'll have some discussion. I'm sure the staff will be discussing this. The administration will be discussing this over the next 2 weeks, and we'll see where we go from here. Councillor Crothers is correct in that as important as it is, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to be some time before the work commences and is done, and it will give time for us to reflect on that and see, and a recommendation perhaps can come forth from staff that can see how we can move forward from here. So I think we have discussed the heating system at length. Council, I have 20 minutes to move before we have to extend our curfew, and there's still quite a bit to be done. But thank you, Chief Sewell. I regret, we certainly admire your position and your opinions, and don't take this as a bad omen or anything. It has been a controversial item, as you well know, and we'll get through it. We have gotten through controversial items before.
We're all good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. We also, we are through the fire. Jill will go into section B, administration, the drainage and railway report follow-up. We certainly can ask Andrew to speak to this. And I know Jill has been very active too on the communications end as well. So Andrew, would you like to break the ice here?
Yes, with regards to where we stand and on drainage, or would you rather me address the motion with regards to the notice that went to other municipalities?
How about we start with the notice that went to municipalities first, because they were continuing to come in today, I believe.
Yes. Okay, so before Christmas, November 25th, I had brought to council an informational report that there had been issues with regards to CN Rail and for maintenance and new construction, that significant delays were done and other issues as a result of that. And from that, council directed administration to send out notice to other municipalities in Ontario. And as a response, over 20 municipalities have responded in support of that. And at this point, I believe the recommendation is that the administration drafts a letter to be sent to the provincial ministers of ag and the federal minister of ag, I believe that was what it was, and the municipal affairs and housing, federal minister of transport, and Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Ontario Drainage Superintendents Association, and our MPs and MPPs in our area.
Okay, very pleased with that. And any questions to council on that? Okay, Andrew, was there a second matter you wanted to address under drainage as well?
Yeah, I thought I would just very quickly mention that the issue still exists, that nothing has changed with regards to the moving forward with maintenance and new construction. This seems to be the same across Southern Ontario after having talked to engineers and other superintendents recently, as of today and this week.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Just to remind council again that during our delegation at Roma, that the instructions from Minister Hardman was to acquire more power behind our statement through the letters, the 20 people that are supporting us in this cause. that will pack more punch in our request. And I think Greg, I believe Greg, am I correct in saying that there is a 50-foot right of way on a track from the center of the track that CN own? I believe it's the right they own 50 feet from the center of the tracks
Yeah, through you, Mayor Allen. Yes, in some cases they do, in other cases a little bit less, but you know, it's not just in Andrew's end of the Drainage Act where we're having trouble with CN. I mean, RCP, both the railways, you know, we have a fair bit of joint work that goes on between the two groups, and in most of the cases I'm dealing with them now, they're just not doing the work, so they're refusing to do the work.
That's good. Fine, council, last call for questions. Will someone entertain the recommendation as presented? Councillor Cowell moved it. Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Crothers? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll proceed to building. The holding tank, Lot 9, Montrose Street, Glencoe. This is a temporary installation. Yes, Councillor Cowell?
I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Crothers? Questions from council? Yes, Councillor Cowell, go ahead.
This is the second one we've done, right?
Yes. Yep. Yes, it's been seconded. Yeah. A question, Councillor Cowell? Okay.
No, sorry, that wasn't my question. I meant like this is the second time we've approved one of these on that street.
All right. Yes, it is. Yeah. Okay. I'm aware of that on the same location.
Butte Street.
Yep. I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. And finance, we'll hand it over to Kristen on the resumption and interest penalty. Kristen, could you walk us through this?
I sure can. I just wanted to bring this back to council's mind because this pandemic has obviously lasted a little bit longer than anybody could have imagined when we first made this motion. So either way, obviously it's council's, I'm just looking for council's direction, whether they would like to continue with the interest and penalty deferral or resume the interest and penalty on taxes. I'm not seeing a huge lag in accounts receivable, as you can see in the report. And I'm concerned with if this lasts a significant amount of time. We've obviously have more costs associated with COVID, and we the deferral of interest moves some of these expenses from more of a user pay to a general levy. So I'm just looking for council's direction on what they would like to do with that.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Questions directed through the chair to Kristen. Councillor Crothers, go ahead, followed by Deputy Mayor Wilkins.
Yes, I believe we've made a commitment that council direct the treasurer to defer the application of interest and penalty to all outstanding accounts receivable until 1 month following the resumption of normal business activities. That hasn't happened. Now, hopefully it will shortly. It all depends how it goes, but that's what we voted on in the past before. So I would make the motion of the second to continue deferral as we are now until such time as hoping things straighten out.
Okay, did I hear from you, Ian, that you're making a motion on that? Is that correct? Or
yeah,
is this discussion?
on the second to continue as we are now. The council continue.
All right. I'll get some. Councillor Scholdice, go ahead.
I'd like to second that, please.
Okay, fine. We're going to resume discussion on this, council. Deputy Mayor Wilkins, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
No, actually, Councillor Crothers did it for me, so thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Mayor Gay. Further discussion, council, if there's any. So in terms of the two recommendations that are before you. The motion is that council continue with the deferral of interest and penalty on accounts receivable. And until
I think
such
Kristen
time.
had a question, Mayor Mayhew.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
I
Kristen,
did.
go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. I did, for the 2021 budget, I did assume that 6 months of the year would be, we wouldn't be collecting interest and penalties. But if we go farther than that, my concern is that just as long as council's aware, the revenue that's lost from that, we budget for the revenue, so it brings the tax rate lower. So if we are not collecting interest, we're going to move that burden onto the general tax base for the 2022 tax year. So we'll either have to increase taxes to offset that or decrease some services.
Mhm.
So just keep that in your minds.
Okay, there's two questions. Councillor Vink, Councillor McGill. Go ahead, Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Allen. Actually, we could take the extra money out of the tax stabilization fund. There's quite a substantial amount in there.
Yep. Lose somewhere else. Councillor McGill.
No. What I was gonna ask. Forgot what I was gonna ask. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. In terms of the recommendation too, we may have to, perhaps, we can come back and visit this again, depending how long this goes on. As Kristen alluded to, this has lasted an extreme period of time, a long time, longer than what any one of us imagined. And secondly, we must remember too that there has been the provincial and federal governments have stepped up to the plate and have given monies available to people who have lost income during this pandemic. And we weren't aware of that at the time that the resolution the council made was adopted. I think maybe I would have liked to have seen a recommendation that we continue deferring the interest penalty for a period of 6 months. At such time, we'll come back and charge again. There could have been a timeline in one of those recommendations there that I would have liked to seen, and probably it may have been considered by council more passionately if we knew there was an element of 6 months. When you change a financial agreement of any type, there's usually an element of time given, so that out of respect to our clients, that they are aware of that. And I would like to see that if this ever comes before council again, that a certain period of time be given. Deputy Mayor Wilkins.
Mayor Mayhew, you are within your right to ask Councillor Crothers if he'd like a friendly amendment to that.
That would be, but Councillor Crothers seemed quite passionate about his motion. Councillor Crothers, you're referring to the 6 months, Deputy Mayor Wilkins? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, I think you did say you'd like to see, you were hoping that something like that would have been put into it. So I'm just suggesting to you that you are able to ask Councillor Crothers, who made the motion, if he do a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but I don't, unless I'm reading Councillor Crothers wrong, I'll let Councillor Crothers speak for himself. Go ahead, Ian.
I guess, and I didn't put it in the motion, but I was inferring the same as in the previous agreement, in which the agreement was until 1 month following the resumption of normal business practices. Now, that isn't in the motion I made, but would that be acceptable just to add that into that motion? And
well, I think if your intent, I think if your intent is to stay the course as council have decided in the past, but I don't like the wording on that. Normal business practices, quite respectfully to all of council, I'm not sure when normal business practices will be back. And many economists at a very high level are saying the same thing. So it's I guess it's open to an interpretation, but I'm not sure when that will materialize. I don't have a crystal ball. Councillor Cowell, go ahead.
It was my understanding at the meeting on the 18th, and I can appreciate we didn't have a full council at that meeting because I believe it was an emergency meeting, but I can't totally remember. That the idea behind this was that 1 month after we removed our state of emergency is when the interest payments would start being collected. And so it wasn't necessarily that the world would go back to normal, but that we as a municipality would remove our state of emergency. I can appreciate that the Ontario government removed their state of emergency and then they reinstalled their state of emergency, and now they've removed their state of emergency. So we're in a very climactic time, it appears. However, could you give us a bit more feedback on that? I think initially we kept a state of emergency in an effort to have access to provincial and federal funds. But as it's been mentioned that the province has decided to step up to the plate, would it be possible to move out of a state of emergency and still expect to receive some of that funding?
I would let Jill answer that. I think we have to have some data to make that decision that will, in terms of numbers and graph lines, I would like to see us flatten the curve, so to speak, before we make such decisions. Jill, could you add to that conversation?
Sure, Your Worship. I think the only thing I would add is I think we tried to leave it somewhat general in that to give council the flexibility. So state of emergency could have been interpreted as the provincial state of emergency or the local state of emergency declaration, really just allowing council to have the flexibility to deal with whatever time frame they were looking for.
Okay, but Councillor Cal, I share your same recollections on the language that you presented to council on that the 30 days following declaring the emergency over was my recollections of the language at the time, but we can check that. Jill, for clarity, Ian, Councillor Vink, go ahead. Last question.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Allen. I support the motion that Ian and Mike has come up with. One simple reason is that we have received from upper levels of government to cover some of our extra COVID expenses. And so that would very well cover this.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Jill, I'll let you speak to that because I know that money's been used for other things as well. Yep, go ahead, Jill.
Sure. I guess I would just offer that we've applied for funds. We have not received those yet, and those are based on specific projects. And the other funds that the municipality received were for operating costs. I'm not sure that this waiving of interest or penalties or other fees would be something that would fit in to what it was that the provincial government was providing or the federal government was providing funding to municipalities for.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Last question, Councillor Cal.
So one of the things that we've seen a lot of over the pandemic is that people have had the opportunity to reach out if they needed assistance. And that's been seen through the St. Vincent de Paul and the different community organizations within the municipality. And one of the big things that came back as a feedback for the St. Vincent de Paul over Christmas, and perhaps Councillor Vink or maybe Councillor Barton can speak to this, is that there was almost a 25% decrease in users of the St. Vincent de Paul this year. And they expected that some of that was as a result of the support that the provincial and federal government was providing. With that in mind, and I'm sure there isn't an appetite for this, but would it be possible to say that we did start charging interest, and that window of interest savings that we would be now collecting, let's say if we enacted it a month from now, would give us an additional 3 months of interest that we are collecting that we hadn't budgeted for, and could put that aside as a COVID relief for our own ratepayers. And so what that means is that if someone reaches out and says, I'm struggling to pay a bill, they could apply for a grant associated with the money that we have now potentially generated from interest. Again, I'm not sure if that's something that's available, but even my hydro company has sent me emails about COVID relief opportunities, but it's based on my need and me applying if I so choose. And so that way it would kind of balance things out where it would be need-based rather than perhaps people saying, well, I'm going to keep my money in the bank and use the municipality's money to pay my bills. So I think that is a nice approach to a need-based sort of situation. But anywho, that was my last comment.
Thank you. Okay, Jill, go ahead, and if council needs clarification on this motion, please ask the clerk to reread it. Go ahead, Jill.
So this wasn't with respect to the motion, it was just with respect to the comments from Councillor Cowell. So I mean, I would ask the treasurer to speak to this, but to set up an additional new fund to administer would be certainly not, like, that's not something that we normally do, and would be new, just a new service that we're providing. You might be easier to try to make a donation instead to another not-for-profit group, instead of having the municipality to try and track and organize something that we don't normally provide. Just a thought.
Thank you, Jill. I think, Jill, you're referring to the benevolence fund or something like that. Yes, that do pay hydro bills and things like that. Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. We're closing in on 1 year since the emergency was declared, I believe on the 13th of March last year. Nobody could have predicted when we had that first emergency meeting that this was going to last this long. Any one of us that are on the Emergency Management Committee and sit in on the briefings weekly, or sometimes there's 2 a week, there have been lately, and there was certainly at the start of this pandemic, or that attends our monthly and sometimes bi-monthly ECG meetings, realizes and recognizes that it's predicted that this isn't ending anytime soon. So I'm just wondering to Councillor Crothers if we maybe couldn't change that motion a little bit. I guess when you read until 1 month following the resumption of normal business activities, that would be hard to define that. What is considered normal? Because I think if you're looking for us to go back with the door open and with a full complement of staff in the municipal office, in many businesses actually, I think that's not going to happen for quite a while. So I'm just asking council if you're prepared to go another year on this. And if not, maybe we should firm that up a little bit. Just a comment.
Councillor Crothers, would you consider making a friendly amendment that we revisit this in 60 days? Added to the end of your motion?
Yes, that's fine. The wording on there, I agree, is pretty opaque. Like it's very hard to find.
Yeah.
That's fine. That was the original wording of the original thing. And no, if we want to set a time limit or whatever, I guess mainly I'm concerned right now that we don't start back prematurely charging the interest and penalty.
So can we revisit the subject? We added to the end of your motion that we revisit it in 60 days. Would you accept that?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, and the seconder of that motion was Councillor Scholdice. Would you accept that, Michael?
Yes.
Thanks very much. Okay, any other questions? Everyone understands the motion. I want to make sure you know that we're going to continue waiving the interest rate on overdue accounts. And I know until business conditions return to normal, and we will re-examine this in another 60 days. At such time that we can, we'll have a better picture of the environment. Okay, the vaccine certainly is going to make for a more normal environment when it gets out, but distribution is still at stake. More questions? I'll call for the motion. All in favor with the added friendly amendment? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Okay. We have, Kristen, if you could walk us through the utility budget. We know that this is some housekeeping that this document has gone on for a period of time. It was approved in 2013.
Yeah, Mayor Mayhew, it's 10 o'clock.
Yep, a motion to continue past curfew. Thank you, Councillor Crothers. Seconder, Councillor Vink. All in favor? All opposed? Holy jeez, I guess we can't. It's 4-4, Jill. Is that correct? Yeah, go ahead.
Then perhaps, yes, then that really leaves us in a pickle.
Okay, I bet it does. Sometimes you gotta work a little later.
Sorry, with respect to continuing services.
Yeah, well, Council, you've put the chair in a difficult position. Technically, the vote has failed to continue past curfew. I don't think that's often happened. I think I called the hands correctly. I saw 4 up and 4 down. Can anyone verify that for me? Jill, can you verify that? Did you see 4 up, 4 down? Councillor Wilkins, did you?
Yes.
Okay. The motion has failed. Therefore, we will have to adjourn the meeting with regret. And I will, there are options open to us that we can, Jill, from time to time, we have to call a special meeting. And that may well be the case to get us through this itinerary here. I regret having to ask staff to do that, but we have to abide by the wishes of council. And that may be an option, council, and we'll certainly notify you well in advance if a special meeting is required to complete this agenda in its own. Perhaps a brief afternoon meeting could be met, or an evening meeting could be arranged. Councillor Wilkins, I saw your hand go up there. I didn't want to not recognize you. Did you have a question or a statement you wanted to make?
I'm just wondering if council would be supportive of dealing with just the in-camera session. Is that something that needs to be addressed correctly, Jill?
Yeah, I think that's well stated, Deputy Mayor. Would you make a motion to that effect? We'll see if we can get a second.
I would be willing to go past. Can I do that, Jill? Make a motion to go past curfew to just deal with in-camera.
So you can have a reconsideration at the same meeting, and it just requires a majority of the council members to reconsider the previous motion.
Okay.
The rest of the agenda could be put over for the next meeting.
Good, that's good. And we need a 2/3 majority. Is that correct, Jill?
I can double check the procedure bylaw, but I'm pretty certain that at the same meeting, it requires just a simple majority.
Okay, that's fine. I believe you're correct.
Sorry, point of order. I think I have a conflict of interest on this motion.
You do.
And yeah, I was gonna say, so I'm out.
You're out.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cal. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for the suggestion. Councils, I am asking for a seconder for the Deputy Mayor's recommendation to deal with the in-committee, in-camera item. Is there a seconder? Councillor Vink, thank you. Discussion? And leave your hands up, Council. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Carried. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor, I'll hand the gavel over to you.
Jill, you let me know. We need a motion to go in camera, Mayor Mayhew.
That's right.
Yeah, a motion from council to go in camera. It's moved by Councillor Crothers, seconded by Councillor Scholdice. Questions? All in favor? Carried.
And,
Let me know, Jill, when you're.
just give me a moment.